Can we turn the thermostats down a little bit? Did we turn it down yet? What's the thermostat at right now? What's the thermostat at right now? Okay, you guys feel okay? Okay, cool. I guess for me it's just the lights that are... Yeah. Thanks. सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्मा तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. Approaching life, it's important to know what the purpose is. On a grand scale, what's the reason for this birth? What am I doing progressing through it? What are the milestones I should be reaching? Also in daily practice. Every day, what is the purpose of today? Have I accomplished it? Or else a stagnancy hits. We get complacent, easy to get lost in the happenings of the world. And instead of my environment being a product of me, I become a product of my environment. That's one of the definitions of bondage that we'll look at today. Now, in our quest to understand this purpose, at a micro level and a macro level, we are blessed with Shastra, various forms of scripture that help us in this alignment. Turning towards what's important, methods to find that as well. Now, if we look at our Advaita Sampradaya, this lineage of the philosophy of non-duality that Chinmaya Mission and therefore all of us belong to, there are two types of texts. One is the type where it's to contend with opposing views. Different philosophies that have their own ideas of what bondage is, of what liberation is, of what jiva is and the jiva's purpose. What is Ishvara from a definition standpoint? What is the purpose of having this jagat? Many differences, some minor, some major, that makes up different philosophies. So one layer of text that we find deal with contending with these opposing views, logically showing why they're invalid, to point at the truth of the Upanishads. The text we look at today is of the second variety. The second variety is an ease of understanding of one's own philosophy. What are the tenets that are given? What are the processes to realize that truth? What are those pitfalls along the way to watch out for? Etc. All of these ideas. Now, the text we look at today comes from one chapter of a beautiful compendium on Advaita Vedanta called Panchadashi. Panchadashi means 15. This text is comprised of 15 chapters by one of the greatest gurus in our entire lineage, Sri Vidyaranya Swamiji. Vidyaranya Swamiji was born as Madhavacharya. Not Madhvacharya, that's of a different sampradaya. This is Madhavacharya was his name originally. Now, he was the second, I believe, of 3 children. And his younger brother and older brother are great stalwarts in their own right. So much so, and this is true, his younger brother was his own guru. Can you imagine that? Imagine your younger sibling being your guru, guiding you adhyatmically. We could never imagine it. That's the caliber of this family. Now, the beauty of Vidyaranya Swamiji is, we know him as that name now. He only got that name at the age of 75, ascending to be the Shankaracharya of the Sringeri Matha. Before then, he led an impactful, colorful life in the political sphere, where with the impending invasions of the Mughal Empire and so many other hostile forces coming into Bharata, in the southern part of India, what is now Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Karnataka, that whole triangle, that region right there, there was a flourishing empire called the Vijayanagara Empire. So the Vijayanagara Empire was created by two brothers, Harihara and Bukka, in the late 1300s, early 1400s, around that time. The one who inspired them to leave the Muslim army and to set up their own kingdom was Sri Vidyaranya Swamiji. So he said, we need to have a Hindu kingdom, and if we study Vijayanagara in depth, I may do a series on that at some point. That was how a true kingdom should be run, and it was devised and completely handled that way. The prime minister was this Madhavacharya, before taking renunciation. So that is the complete idea of what a guru is, where you look at adhyatmically guiding people to the truth, at the same time facilitating growth so that in daily life, a Hindu can thrive in a kingdom. Beautiful facets we see from all sides of this great guru. Now, what text did he come with? Many prakarana granthas that he's written. Drigdrishya Viveka is one of them. Going into this construct of understanding what is that relationship between objects of the world, the seer of the object, how does understanding that take me to the truth? He's also written Jivan Mukti Viveka, an advanced text going into what is the nature of the person who is realized, how do they comport themselves, how do they come to that knowledge, how do I know I am at that precipice of understanding what this truth is? He wrote Sarva Darshana Sara Sangraha, a text where he put 16 different schools of thought right next to each other, refuting each one of them using a different philosophy, culminating in the Advaitic truth. So logically going through each layer, and like dominoes falling, one philosophy defeats another until there's only one left standing at the end. He's gone through that exhaustive treatise there. He wrote Anubhuti Prakasha. Anubhuti Prakasha is beautiful in that it details 10 to 12 major Upanishads. And the structure that it's written in, the first verse of each set of two verses is a doubt or an objection. The second verse right after it resolves whatever that previous objection is. And like that on all the major Upanishads, there's about anywhere from 50 to 100 shlokas, sets like that on each topic of the Upanishads. He also wrote Shankara Digvijaya. Shankara Digvijaya is how we know everything we know about Bhagavan Sri Adi Shankaracharya Ji. His entire life. In 32 years, how he spread this philosophy. Establishing mathas in all 4 cardinal directions of Bharata. Traveling the length and width of the country so many times, simply with this one purpose of upgrading what we know about the religion to fit the modern times, showing the supremacy of what the Upanishadic knowledge is. When the Bauddha Darshana, Buddhism, had ravaged, infiltrated the entire Bharatavarsha almost, he helped reestablish what the truth of Sanatana Dharma was. And that's carefully, painstakingly documented by Sri Vidyaranya Swamiji in Shankara Digvijaya. So glory to the Acharya. His magnum opus, perhaps the most famous of all of his texts then, is Panchadashi, where 15 chapters, and if we look at it in sets of 5 chapters each, we find that the first 5 chapters deal with Sat, the existence principle. How do I know I exist? What does that existence mean? What are the ramifications of not knowing this knowledge? Everything is exhaustively gone through there. Next 5 chapters, chapters 6 until chapters 9, that goes through an exhaustive analysis of chit, that consciousness principle. Painstakingly analyzed. And finally, the last 5 chapters, 10 through 15, 10 is what we're looking at today, is about Ananda. Now, there's elements of all 3 peppered throughout the text, but this is one kind of a breakdown that's given. And the beauty of Panchadashi is, unlike many other texts, every single chapter can be studied as its own grantha, complete in its own way, without having to go through all the previous chapters. A thought will begin in the beginning of the chapter, and it'll get resolved near the end. So there's no worry about having to go in order or going through preceding chapters in any way. And the chapters vary in so many ways as well. The first chapter goes through the knowledge we find in texts like Tattva Bodha and Atma Bodha. What are these 3 bodies we're dealing with? Sthula, Sukshma, Karana. What is Avasthatraya Viveka, where we go through waking, dream, deep sleep? All of that is gone through at a basic level. Some texts, in chapters in the text, like the 7th chapter, Tripti Deepa, goes into various questions that arise. Why can't there be 2 consciousnesses? Why is it only one? How do I know that this Chidabhasa, meaning inner instrument, is purified, ready for this knowledge? All of these things are gone through. And that text is about 298 different shlokas. Then you'll find a peculiar chapter like the 5th chapter of this text. The 5th chapter is only 8 shlokas long. Deals with 4 well-known Mahavakyas and goes into what the meanings of these great sayings are. So like that, it's a very eclectic text in that way. Now, what is the beauty of this specific chapter then? Let's take a time out and look at how we analyze in Vedanta. When we learn math, division, for instance, when we teach children, even if it's a simple thing like 10 divided by 2, you still put the 10 and then the 2 on the side, and you say 2 times what number equals 10, you put the 5 up. You do that whole process like that. Now, this is something that can easily be memorized, but a process is put in place so that when you have to do 1,048 divided by 12, for instance, that can't be mentally done. Unless you're that recent, 8-year-old Indian kid in Idaho that did that. Unless you're like that, that can't be mentally done. Therefore, you need some process to go through. Processes have to be scalable that way for thinking, in a way that each individual can understand it. I was watching a TV show recently where there are a bunch of gangsters. Even a gangster wants what's best for his child. As much as you all want your kids to be educated, even gangsters want their kids to be educated. They say, hey, don't take up this path like I did. Please go get yourself educated. So he's telling his son, he's 15. He says you have to study hard in school and everything. And this dad's a big-time mafia don. So the kid's failing at math, apparently. So he wants to tutor him. And he's trying to teach him, addition, subtraction, all of these things. Saying that, look, if there are 5 pieces of candy right here, you take 2 away, there's only 3 left. He's going from that level like that, building up. The kid can't compute these things. Then the dad says, okay, he grew up around me. Let me give a different method right here. He says, we go get hafta from people every single week. Last year, we got $20 from this guy, $10 from that guy, $6 from that guy. The other guy did not pay his 20%, so I sent some goons to beat him up. What was the 20% I took from that guy? Instantly, the kid knows the answer right away. Because you talk in that mafia context like this, the interest is there. He's fully honed in. And he says, yeah, this is the amount right there. So like that, whatever interests I'm in or whatever mindset I'm in, the framework has to be presented to me that way so that I can understand this knowledge. The beauty of Vedanta is to understand this one truth of what my true identity is. A multitude of frameworks are available to me. What are some of them? Panchakosha Viveka. For this one, there has to be some knowledge of, there are various layers that I have in my personality. Some that are readily seen, experienced, understood. Some that are more subtle that need some thinking. Some that need Shastra to tell me this layer exists. That's all in this framework. For example, the 5 sheets, then Panchakosha. You have at the very basic layer, Annamaya Kosha. this body that is made up of this matter right here, sustained by food, sourced from food, going back into food at the end. This is one layer. A physiological layer beyond that, pranamaya kosha. Those functions of my body that I do not necessarily have to control, they simply happen on their own. Circulation of blood, digestion of food, breathing, all of this happens naturally. That's one more subtle layer of my personality. Manomaya kosha, third layer, seat of emotions that I have. This is readily recognized, even if I don't think about it, seat of emotions. Separate from that layer, even more subtle, if emotions is one layer, knowingness and clarity and seat of decision making is one more layer beyond that. Vijnanamaya kosha. Finally, what does Shastra tell me? There's one more layer above that as a part of this whole system. That layer is where my desires are percolated, likes and dislikes become desires there, happiness is experienced there on that highest level. Anandamaya kosha, that most subtle layer, fifth one right there. So through this framework, understanding subtleties until I get to what that true identity is. That's one framework of thinking. Another is avasthatraya viveka. One that is beautiful because it is readily experienced by us. It doesn't need any kind of special qualification to understand. We all go through waking, dream, deep sleep. Therefore, unpacking each of these, what happens in each of these layers, access that I have to my body and mind in each of these layers, thereby surmising that my identity must be something separate from all three of them. One framework of understanding. Another one, karana, karya viveka, karana, cause, karya, effect. Where are you from? I came from my mother. Everyone is from their mother. What kind of question is that, right? So from the most basic source like that, all the way more subtly, where does everything come from? What is the source of this entire universe? Sat, existence principle, is where I have to take that logic to. No other place I can go. Now, what is the framework for this week that we look at, specific to this chapter right here? Sakshi Chaitanya Viveka. Sakshi meaning witness, Chaitanya meaning that consciousness principle. Where if you've looked at texts like Advaita Makaranda, Drigdrishya Viveka, Kenopanishad, these texts go into understanding this line of thinking. Where it's important to see, I've mentioned this before elsewhere, the beauty of our philosophy is the very question that is asked based on these frameworks is far ahead of different philosophies and their conclusions. The very question that we ask is far ahead of the conclusions of various philosophies. For instance, you look at a famous French philosopher, René Descartes. His famous statement is, I think, therefore, I am. Where for him, existence is predicated, knowing that he exists, is predicated on the fact that because I have this thinking capability, that is how I know, essentially, that I am existing. Thought is proof of existence. Let's keep that on one side. And that's seen as one of the highest philosophies we can come to. That's the conclusion that he came to in his text called The Meditations. Now, look at the question posed by the student. The question in Mundakopanishad, or in Kenopanishad, sorry. In Kenopanishad, what is the question? The Shishya says, Hey Guru, I know that I see objects of the world with my eye. I know that my mind makes some recollection of what is seen by this eye, and therefore has some memory associated with it, and some cognition happens there. I know that my intellect sees this mind, some decision is made based on that cognition. I want to know, what is that entity that sparks even this intellect right here? That's his question. One philosophical conclusion that we're looking at says, because this intellect is present, therefore that means existence is there. The question asked by the seeker in Kenopanishad is, I know that the intellect is inert at the end of the day. What is that source illumining this very thing in the first place? See how the standpoints diverge like this. Because of a reliance on Shastra. So this Sakshi Chaitanya relationship we're looking at right here is, what is that ultimate witness of all of these happenings? Now, one beautiful way of assessing these shlokas here, we can say that there are many different types of shlokas. You take Srimad Bhagavad Gita, for instance, there are those where Arjuna is confused and asking different questions. Bhagavan Sri Krishna gives him tips on sadhana in some places, analysis of the inner personality in some places, talking about what the Jivan Mukta is like in some places, realized person, then going to his own glory in some places. It seems very hard to categorize. In a Prakarana Grantha like this, it becomes a little bit more simplified. Reductive, but we can look at it in two different ways right here. One type of shloka that we find will always be on Siddhanta. Siddhanta meaning fundamental principles. What is my true nature? What is the source of this entire creation? What is the composition of this entire creation? What is the role of that Ishvara in the life of this Jiva, ordaining it through this Jagat? These are all Siddhanta. Uncompromising, irrefutable fundamental principles that make up the edifice, the foundation of what the religion is. Siddhanta. The second type of shloka we'll find is prakriya, process-oriented, where this is the mindset I have to realize this truth in Siddhanta. These are the processes I must go through of purification, of expanding my mind, of concentration, of restricting this inner instrument, of negating this inner instrument. This is all prakriya. So Siddhanta, principle, prakriya, process. These are the two different types of shlokas we'll be looking at in our study. Now, having gone through all of that then, let's look at what this first shloka is. And I'll just chant each shloka. We won't have time for me to parse every word and go through like that. I'll give the main idea, building us up to each of these concepts. Paramatma dvayananda purnah purvam svamayaya svayameva jagad bhutva pravishad jiva rupataha. Paramatma dvayananda. That Paramatma that is non-dual, of the nature of bliss, supreme, of existence. That entity became this entire creation. Objection right away, how is that possible? For there to even be this creation, which is a cause, which is an effect of a cause, which has so many parts and functions to it, how can you say that comes from one non-dual source that has no attributes whatsoever? One simple answer we come to is Maya. That is the only answer we can come to. Maya, in its most basic definition, a magical power that we cannot understand. From the standpoint of me and you as jivas, anirvachaniya, that which cannot be touched by any kind of logic. That is Maya. In this case right here, what's given? Swayameva jagat bhutva. Maya is used swayam eva, only by oneself, meaning that Ishvara, wielding the power of that Maya, created this entire universe right here. Now, one other specialty of various texts that we see. There's a triad that's there we have to understand. Jiva, meaning me as this individual. We'll define what that is later here. Ishvara, that Bhagavan. Jagat, this world. For any kind of inquiry that we go into for the truth, we have to start with this triad. And every text will start with one member of this triad to analyze first. Has to analyze all three eventually. Starts with one, in this case, Ishvara, and that Jagat is where we're starting. The question to ask ourselves at this point is it that there is the world because I exist? Or do I exist because the world exists? Who says I exist because the world exists? World is there. I came out from that world on one great day. I will go back to the world on one great day, but I came out on one great day. I am a product of that world. Who says world exists because I exist? The purpose of this jagat existing is to serve as a playground for me as the jiva to exhaust my vasanas. That is the purpose of it. Bhagavan was not bored sitting there one day saying cowboy season is already over, it's not even December, life sucks, let me make a world. It's not how that happened. The reason why this entire jagat exists is because as this jiva, and why am I born as this jiva? That'll come later, okay? The answer to that you won't like, but it'll come later for sure. This entire jagat is the playground to exhaust those vasanas so I can get out of this jivatva. Therefore, jagat exists because I as a jiva exist. Because that jagat is there, someone has to wield, ordain, have some authority for this entire world. Ishvara is there for that reason. Why am I explaining this in the very beginning? Because anytime we look at Advaitic texts, the first question always has to be, okay, there is no creation in the first place. Everything is only that one existence. Why does talking about the world even matter? This is why. As a jiva going through all the problems and everything that I have, I need to understand why am I in this situation? What is the way out of it? And sometimes the questioning goes to, okay, why did this jiva even come about as this individual? Who was the first jiva? All of this. The answer given to that is beginningless, anadi. There is no beginning to it, just that is the way it is. Oh, but that's a cop-out, it doesn't logically check out. Okay? When Puja Gurudev, studying at the feet of Puja Swami Tapovanji Maharaj, approaches him and asks him, what is the origin of ignorance? His guru's answer was mind-blowing. He lovingly snapped at him, saying, are you here to study ignorance or to study the nature of knowledge? What are you here for? Gurudev understood right away what the meaning of that was. Imagine you're walking in like a desert area. All of a sudden you fall into some quicksand. And the beauty of quicksand is the more you struggle to get out, the faster you sink into it. There is a way to get out though. You increase your surface area as much as possible. I didn't try this, Bear Grylls told me. You increase your surface area as much as possible and you're able to roll out the right way when you're getting on the surface right there. So you get in there. And instead of doing that, you start a process of inquiry. Why did I fall in here? How did I fall in here? My Google map didn't show me there was quicksand right here. How was there this whole massive quicksand right here? Why is it that 3 other people were walking by me? They're all on dry land. I only fell into the quicksand. Why did that happen? By the time this inquiry gets to a critical point, you are critical by then. You're under the whole quicksand. The point is to get out. Same thing if you fall in water when you're canoeing. How did I fall? How did the boat tip? It's not even that many waves. You're drowned by the time you think about all this stuff. Focus on getting out. Similarly, finding myself as a jiva in this world right here, where every single lifetime that I live is a gift. A gift, why? It gives me the capability to get out of all of this. Should that be my focus, or is it on where did the jiva come from? Why did the jiva come from? Which number jiva am I in all of this? None of that matters right there. Am I focused on ignorance? Am I focused on that knowledge? The Shastra points me in that right direction. Or else, in the name of inquiry, what I end up doing is, it's a famous proverb in Sanskritam, kakadanta parikshanyaya. Kakadanta pariksha. Or I go to university. What are you majoring in, beta? I'm majoring in counting the teeth of a crow. Okay. We need people that do all different jobs. That's fine. Just as the world needs lawyers, the world also needs people that count the teeth of a crow. Okay, what is your master's degree in now? Specialization, this specific species of crow, counting the teeth of that kind of a crow. Okay, wonderful. And PhD, what is your research area and thesis in? I found a new species of crows and discovered them. I'm counting their teeth and seeing how many they have. I've paid tuition to do all of this, no doubt. I am the supreme authority on this topic in the world. What have I accomplished by doing all of this, though? Other inquiries can be the same way. Which is why when there's any inquiry taken into, using Shastra as, not a crutch even, as the very source that I go into, that is completely necessary. And the Apurvata, specialty of the Hindu Shastra is, it is the only scripture in the world. I'm talking about the Veda, Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutra, their derivatives in the form of Prakarana Granthas. This is the only set of scriptures that answers this question of what is my true identity. No other philosophy, no other religion even scratches the surface on it. So am I here saying Sanatana Dharma is the greatest religion in the world? You bet I am. Unless I believe that fully, I won't see this as the one truth to dive into completely. And it's given in so many angles for that. So ikshanam is the verb given here. Ikshanam, he entered that world. Created that world and entered it. In what way? We see this in the second shloka now. Devadyuttama deheshu pravishto devata bhavat martyadya dhama deheshu sthito bhajati devatam. Devatyuttama deheshu. That Ishvara, that Paramatma, entered the bodies of devatas. All these presiding deities that we have, entering those realms in order to run this Jagat. That's one role that Ishvara took up. Devata bhavat. Sthito bhajati devatam. That same Ishvara enters the bodies of those who worship those devatas. That's you and me. Inferior bodies. That same Paramatma comprises those as well. What is this to mean right here? That it is not that there is divinity versus that which is undivine. That is not the Hindu construct at all. Looking at the Abrahamic lens, we see that there is that which is divine and that which is satanic or demonic. That's not the gradation we look at. The very definition of Maya is Trigunatmika Maya. Maya expresses in the forms of the three gunas. That is the framework that we look at. What we say as evil is completely filled with rajas and tamas. Evil is nothing but that terrible preponderance of that without any kind of sattva. That which is divine is predominantly sattvic. That's why it said Ishvara is that pradhana sattva. Preponderance of sattva is the highest in that Ishvara. The sattva that you and I experience as jivas is malina sattva. That sattva which is malina, diluted by the huge influence of rajas and tamas that is in us as well. The entire point of a sadhaka, process-oriented, is to rise from this level of tamas and rajas to be sattvic, eventually even letting go of that, triguna atita, being above the gunas. That is the sign of that realization. One of Pujya Gurudev's names, one of my favorites, Trigunatmikaya Namaha, the one who is above the gunas. Gunatitaya Namaha, Gunatitaya Namaha, Guna Atita, the one who is beyond these three gunas. Now, what is the other significance of understanding that this Ishvara is in and through everything? Because one hard concept to grapple with at this point is, how does that one entity express as so many? This is where the age-old debate comes in. How do we label Sanatana Dharma? Is it monotheistic? Is it polytheistic? Can we make up other phrases that sound amazing? Qualified monism, non-dual monism. I've heard all these different phrases before. It only confuses me further. Our religion does not fit that kind of a framework. It's apples to oranges right here. The Sanatana Dharma construct that's created here is, there is that one source pervading in and through everything, the wielder of those gunas that is responsible in and through everything, if it comes from that source, technically we can say it is pervasive through all. Therefore, because of that one consciousness principle, that one appears as many. And take any example that you want that personifies that. Pujya Gurudev's favorite example was that one electricity that goes through, that's in the light bulb, that's in the laptop power right here, that is in the toaster oven. Everything is that one consciousness going through. As Bhagavan says in 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Sutre Manigana Iva. I am that sutra, that one thread going in and through everything. Manigana, different forms of everything can arise that way. Forms that we know of, forms that we don't even know of. On Sunday, I was at the home doing a home satsang for a set of families. All their kids are between the ages of 3 and 7. So naturally, 2 days after Halloween, my first question was, what did you dress up as for Halloween? So I'm going through. So you have the usual basic Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, all these kinds of mans that there are. And then they would say these things I never even heard of. I said, what is that from? And I think the kids said something like a K-pop demon hunter fighter, demon fighter, what? K-pop demon slayer. I had to ask 3 times what that was. I didn't even know what that is. So now, my achadin guy, I think, because being 25 years older than those kids now, I don't know what they're talking about. So it was a good ride while it lasted. It's come to an end, my days of knowing what they're talking about. So forms that we know, forms that we don't even know, that are arising every day, that is nothing but that Ishvara pervading as well, in all different forms. Now, after explaining this manyness, first 2 shlokas again recapping. First shloka, we see that this entire prapancha, this entire jagat, is nothing but expression of that Ishvara. In the second shloka, we see what is it, multitude of forms, how is that taken up. Third shloka then goes into talking about this jiva. Where do I find myself in this entire gambit? Aneka janma bhajanat svavicharam chikirshati vicharena vinashtayam mayayam shishyate swayam. Aneka janma. What other shloka do we chant every week that starts with Aneka janma? Guru Stotram, Aneka janma samprapta. I know some of us are awake when we chant that also. What there it's given, that what do I gain after living after these lifetimes again and again? That is the glory of the Guru that gives me what I gain. Prapta, what I gain from that. Here, what's given right here, Aneka janma bhajanat, because of devotion that is ardent, lifetime upon lifetime, that brings me to this point to do self-inquiry. Self-inquiry on what? Understanding what is my true identity. Even having that proclivity to want to understand this is nothing but blessings of Bhagavan. Yeah, we chose to understand this, chose to come to satsang, chose to follow Gurudev's teachings, yes. Even coming to that choice is nothing but blessings, nothing but those samskaras being passed down lifetime upon lifetime. Because if we were in a position, say, to feed our families, we have to work 3 or 4 jobs, which there are people that have to do that. Where's the time for vichara in the first place then? We blame people saying, oh, with so many Hindus in the world, 90% of them don't even care about this knowledge. They just do rituals mindlessly, go to the temple and that's it. Play dandiya time during Navaratri and that's it. There's no inquiry going on. Even having that capacity to have time to inquire, nothing but a blessing right there. Doesn't make anyone superior to anyone else, just that in a jiva's journey, this is even rare to come by. Because countless actions performed in previous births, they lead to a certain trajectory. A trajectory that makes someone calm of mind, a trajectory that gives someone the samarthya, capability, mental capacity, intellectual yearning, as well as the comfort to be able to inquire. All of that has to be there. Oh, a deeper question comes in here. Bhajanat is a beautiful verb given right here. That's not just devotion. Practice of devotion is bhajanat. What role does that serve then? Because there are different camps of people that express their thoughts. One view is if this knowledge is the highest and that's what matters most, why worry about all this bhakti and puja, patha, parayana? Why does it matter at all? Why not just study that deepest Advaitic truth and be done with it? That's one camp. Another type of thinking, the one I contended with recently, the conversation was, for most people wanting a sense of community, wanting to know Bhagavan loves them, wanting to love Bhagavan themselves and make themselves better people, that is the vast majority. So it doesn't really matter if we don't come to this knowledge right here. It's okay. The resolution to all these different types of thinking is, when we look at it from a narrow standpoint, this is when we fall for these different kinds of confusions. Even Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, to open the 5th chapter, his question to Bhagavan Krishna is, okay, so far in the 2nd chapter, you talked to me about, he doesn't say in the 2nd chapter that we've made those chapters, okay? He's just saying previously in the conversation, previously on the episode of Bhagavad Gita, you told me very clearly that action is supreme. That is how I improve myself. Then you told me knowledge is supreme in the 4th chapter. Without this knowledge, there is not knowing your identity. Therefore, that is supreme. Tell me which one is better now. You said both are the best. Which is the bestest then? Bhagavan says it's not looking at it as which is the best. It is a sequential process you have to go through. For wherever you are in your growth, action is the best for you if your mind must be purified and not ready for renunciation. After those vasanas having been exhausted, for where you are at that point, knowledge is the best right there. It's a whole sequential process. Similarly, what's given right here with bhajanat. Without that pure, ardent devotion and upasana done to Bhagavan, there is no spiritual growth. So I cannot have it both ways. I can't have it conveniently where I say, I just want to go into philosophy, study what the deepest books have to say, go through all that logic, but do not make me put a flower on Ishvara. I don't want to do all that stuff. It does not work. As much as the head has to be involved, the heart must be involved as well. No way around it. Because the purification of this inner instrument only happens through that process of bhakti. Why? And no other process? Because to go from that tamas to that rajas to that sattva, holding on to that feet of that Ishvara is the only way I rise in that process. There is no other way but that. So the question comes up often. That's why I'm addressing this. In these home satsangs that I do, one common question across the board from adults is, why can't I just call myself a Hindu and say that I believe in the philosophy and values? Why do I have to go through that ritualistic action, have an Ishtadevata? I see all of that as just encumbrances. Those are not shackles. They remove the shackles that I have. If I am to see this entire creation as that Paramatma, instead of it existing as some abstract idea in my mind, when I have a name and a form associated with it, that this is my Krishna, my Rama, my Shiva, seeing the entire creation as that, there's a connection built with that idea even more. So everything has a purpose. Every single layer and step has a purpose right here. So by that inquiry, vicharena vinashtayam mayayam shishyate svayam. I understand that this maya, vinashyati, maya is destroyed, shishyate svayam. That self is all that remains in that process. So we saw the first 2 shlokas had to do with siddhanta principles. This 3rd shloka goes into prakriya. What is that process that is involved? Now, there's a question that arrives at this point, one objection. If we were to define liberation, we say that liberation is abiding in my own true nature. Abiding in my true nature. What is true nature to me? Because if you tell me that true nature is something that lies beyond this body. Have we ever had any experience where we are not this body? I mean, without, sutta and everything put aside, have we ever had an experience where we can say we're not this body? It's not possible. Have we ever had any experience where we say we're beyond this mind? Even if you bring up deep sleep and say there's no connection to mind at that point, even then, whatever that experience is, we don't know. So experientially, anubhuti, how can we say that my true nature is abiding in something beyond all this? This is where the Shastra comes in again. Fourth shloka. Advayananda rupasya sadvayatvam cha dukkhita bandhav prokta svarupena sthitir muktiritiriyate. Beautiful words. Sthitir muktiritiriyate. Abiding in the own nature is said to be liberation. So if we're defining that as liberation, to understand and surmount that question of I haven't felt I'm not this body and everything, we have to define what bondage is right here. Advayananda rupasya. That bondage is not knowing that I am, at the end of the day, this non-duality. Seeing myself as that duality is dukkhita, cause of that sorrow in the first place. What does that even mean? What is duality at the end of the day? Two, dual. As Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi Ji puts it in Saddarshanam, another beautiful text. He says the entire reason for my sorrow is this and that. The moment I say something is this or that based on closeness to me, the moment I point that out, that means I'm indirectly pointing out an I right there. As opposed to that I, this is a this and that is a that. You. The moment I say you, I'm separating that from I once again. So anything I point at like that points back at the I. I'm not starting an argument on pronouns here, okay? I'm just saying this to prove this point that these are the ways that I is established constantly, whether we know it or not. With every one of these different pronouns, I is being strengthened at that time. Because there is an other, something separate from me, there is a fear that arises. Possessing something that is mine, that gives me joy, that allows me to know anything, holding on to that possessing is different from me. It can leave me at some point. Whether that's a person or a thing, anything like that. Having a fear and aversion of some other person. They make me feel a negative way or give me some kind of toxicity. That causes a fear again, seeing them as the other. Seeing something else as the other that I cannot understand as much as I try. There's a fear associated with that lack of clarity as well, hurting me at the intellectual level. Otherness is a cause of every single sorrow that I have. Some scary things I have to do sometimes as a brahmachari. Last night, I came home from a Bhiksha, 2 nights ago, about 10 p.m. And then Sunday, I tell them every time, make sure all the lights are off at the end of Balvihar. But at the top right corner right there, one of the lights is on. And it's a Sunday night. Now, if I don't see it, I can just go to my house and sleep. If I see it, though, I have to, go in and do something about it. And there's no one else here at that time. So, 20,000 square foot building. You know how scary it is to walk in here alone in the dark? I'm 32 years old. I know I shouldn't be scared. There's an alarm system, everything. Still, that fear is there. So I turn my phone light on, run all the way up there, say a special prayer at the temple on my way as I'm running up there, turn that light off, and jump out of the building as soon as I can. That darkness hides anything that is here. That fear of the unknown is a big factor, especially in a vast area like this. It's a big factor. So otherness causes unknown, otherness causes attachment, otherness causes aversion. All of these are known as that sorrow of duality. Coming out of that is the greatest liberation. Now, knowing my own true nature means what very clearly right here? That the process of coming to this understanding of what I am, karma cannot get me there. Another basic tenet we have to go through. This is beautifully given by Bhagavan Sri Adi Shankaracharya ji in his Mundakopanishad Bhashya, where he says, karma's result is 4 things. Apyam, prapyam, vikaryam, samskaryam. Apyam is to make something, create something. When we eat dinner, the ingredients that goes in lasagna is cheese and that pasta and the tomato and everything. You don't sit there and eat, 10 tomatoes separately, then a whole gob of cheese, then you take pasta, and it has to go together in some way. That karma results in apyam, creation, of taking various elements, making something that is new. Apyam. Prapyam, acquiring something that I don't already have. That's our whole barter system right there. It started with, I'll give you 2 of my cows if you give me cement to build my house. Now we've evolved into, I will give you Bitcoin that is untraceable, and you will give me something that is offshore on a Swiss account somewhere. Right? We've evolved in that way. So prapyam. Third is vikaryam, transforming something. I heat up a giant bowl of milk. I put in a little bit of the curd, samskara, the culture in there, let it incubate overnight. I open it the next day. The whole thing has become one massive curd. Vikaryam, transform the very entity in what it is, its very nature. Finally, samskaryam, purifying something. The reference is given in Atmabodha, the Kartaka nut, that even in the Himalayas, before Swachha Bharat and everything, even before way back then, the water was pure. Even then, there was sediment and dirt and things in the water. That's their only water source, though, the river. They'd get a full pail of that, put the Kartaka nut in there. That nut catalyzes some kind of reaction. All the sediment settles down. They strain that water, and then it's fine for consumption. Samskaryam, purifying that karma, purifies that water. Now, using that 4-way test, this is what karma can do. Is mukti, liberation, the product of any of these 4 processes right here? Results of karma? Apyam. Am I creating my liberation? It's not created. Abiding in my true nature is not some manufacturing that I can do. It was always there. Maya, that ignorance is what veiled it. This knowledge uncovers that. That's all it is. There's no other creating anything. Prapyam. Am I acquiring something I do not currently have? I did not have this identity, then I went and got it. Is it like that? You can do that with some identities. They gave me yellow clothes and said, you are now Hari Chaitanya. It's possible. You can assume an identity. Isn't this just assuming an identity I don't have? No, this was an identity I always had, though. The assuming was putting on my name and everything like that before was the assuming that was going on. That's the result of delusion right there. So apyam, it's not created. Prapyam, this is not something acquired that I don't already have. Vikaryam, am I changing anything to come to this identity? You're lifting that ignorance. Aren't you changing that, though, when you're lifting that ignorance away? If that ignorance is something that is false that was covering me, what's the question of changing this very entity? We're eradicating this entity, if anything. This idea that I am this body, mind, intellect, all of that is being thrown in the trash. Nothing is being morphed here. I'm just ripping it all away. There's no change taking place. Samskaryam. This is the tricky one right here. Purification. Does purification give liberation? I've heard priests say in temples, you do this one yaga or this one yatra or this one process, all sins are completely washed away. You are guaranteed moksha. I heard one priest say that. He said donation of $1,001, but if you give that, moksha is guaranteed, he said. Ganga snana means all sins are gone as well, doesn't it? Doesn't that mean purification gives liberation? Purification of mind is a requirement to set me up to receive this knowledge. That's the most that it does. Because this knowledge illuminates what my mind is currently, illuminates what that identity is. I have to do the work of cleaning out this mind to get to that point. So samskaryam is necessary as a karma. That does not give me liberation, however. So clearly going through this four-way test, we see eradicating ignorance through knowledge is the only way to get to this liberation. No type of karma done in various ways to various extremes in different peculiar ways, none of that gets me this knowledge. It's necessary in the process of a jiva. That does not give me this knowledge, however. Bondage only comes to an end when that maya is eradicated. But then another objection comes up. Whether in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says this, or we see this in other places as well. People like Janak Maharaj, they got perfection through action alone, didn't they? Action alone is what got them to where they were. Ruling kingdoms the way they did, the knowledge and what they got. The fifth shloka answers this right here. Avicharakrito bandhaha vicharena nivartate tasmad jiva paramatmano sarvadaiva vicharayet. The bondage that we're looking at, bandhaha, avicharakrito vicharena nivartate. It comes from lack of discrimination. Lack of understanding what is real and unreal. Lack of understanding what are steps in an entire process of what leads to what. So when we say someone like a Janak Maharaja, action is what led to perfection. Perfection from what standpoint? Perfectly executing dharmas, perfect clarity of thinking, that means I have a close to perfect inner instrument, no doubt. Good, perfect. Does that mean I have knowledge, however? Knowledge is not that my mind is beautiful, my mind is perfect. Knowledge is I have no mind. That this very inner instrument that I'm functioning with is an equipment, a tool that I use, just like the rest of me. This inner instrument is nothing but an illusion. It is false. My identity is something different. I use a lawnmower. I use a fly swatter. These are all equipments that I use for my happiness. Thank God I have them around me. I'm never identified with those things, however. Similarly, this body, mind, intellect, instruments I use for a purpose for my growth, I am not any of these things. That discrimination, viveka, lack of that is the bondage I find myself stuck in right now. Which is why the inquiry that has to take place is tasmat jiva paramatmano sarvadaiva vicharayet. The thinking has to be, what am I as this individual? What is that Paramatma as the Supreme Self? That has to be my opening way of thinking about this whole thing. And in this specific text right here, what we find as the example given in the focus is, with all the happenings that are going on with this body assemblage of the BMI, how do I remain as a witness away from all of this and simply watch what is happening? That is the vichara taken up here, with one of the most beautiful examples that we can ever find. Where you go to any kind of performance, there will be a dance and music element right there. So starting from the outside coming in, first is the audience is there. Now, audiences are of different varieties. Even in sports, we find that. There's a tennis audience. Tennis, the rule is you can't talk and cheer during the point. You have to wait till after. Players have to concentrate. You go to a football game, that's not the culture there. okay? You let the galis fly when they're playing, when they're not playing, anything goes there. So different cultures of audiences. Musical performance as well, it varies on what the concert type is. You go to some kind of bhajan performance, you're not going to be cheering and dancing and everything like that. A rock concert, a rap concert, something like this, you're free to do all those things. And the singer has you sing half, you pay the tickets and go, they want you to sing half the song though. They keep putting the mic out there and then, auntie, uncle, they make everyone sing in the audience like that. So different types of crowds are there. At the end of the day, the strength of the crowd and the enthusiasm of the crowd, that makes a difference in how the musicians and dancers perform. If a crowd is interested, enthusiastic, engaged, they put out a better performance. Same thing for a brahmachari when they speak. If the audience is sleepy and everything, if you yawn, I yawn. It's a mirror thing, right? If 10 people yawn, I feel like yawning 10 times as well. That's why I don't eat too big of a meal before I give a lecture. And the ammas in the Sunday sessions are so loving. No, eat more, eat more. I say, look, if you fall asleep in my lecture, that's expected. No one's going to blame you for that. It's normal. If I fall asleep in my own lecture, that looks really bad, especially when we're streaming to YouTube and everything. So that's why I don't eat a big meal, right? If I sleep, it looks not too good out there. So there's a kind of energy that you get from the audience. Then you have the musicians and the dancer. The tempo that the musicians play in, dancer has to dance at that. I went to an arangetram, and dancers dancing, and I think the musicians had some kind of visa problem, right? So instead of coming in like a month before when they should have, they came in a week before. So they had literally 4 or 5 days of practice, I think is all that they had. And it showed. Because these musicians also, they're playing a certain tempo and you can't hear anything well there. The dancer's looking at them angrily every now and then. You're playing too fast, I have to go, you're dragging, I have to. The dancer has to adapt to what the musicians are doing up there. And the musician's job is not easy either. Every note, for it to be in tune and to sound right, it's not just based on their skill, the instrument they're playing has to respond as well and be in tune. That's why we went to Chinmaya Vibhuti for a concert. There was some singer, Hindustani classical singer, with a perti harmonium, and then there is a shehnai on the side, and someone violin, all these different instruments there. The first 15 minutes is just them tuning their instruments. And you could tell the guy sitting in front of us was a novice attendee. After they finished tuning their instruments, he started clapping. He thought that was the first song that they had played. They're tuning their instruments. Oh yeah, ooh. They hadn't even started then yet. Everything has to be set up the right way. You have your audience, your musicians, your dancer. Then the whole shebang does not start, no matter who the audience is. The main patron, the Raja, has to be the one that's sitting in the audience for it to start. Without that one person, the whole thing doesn't happen. Like at our camps that we have at Mangalam, one of my memories of being a chick is the worst job you can have at a camp is giving the mic to the people to sing the bhajans. You have to beg people to sing. No one wants to. It's like coordinators that want these kids to sing Om Namah Shivaya in the beginning of the session. Every kid looks away. No one wants to do it. You have to force some kid or threaten them or bribe them or something like that. You all know the tricks. You know how to do it. But you have to do something to make them do it. So my job was to give the mics to sing a bhajan. And this one guy signed up, really good singer, wanted to sing. I gave him the mic. He took it. He's waiting. I'm saying, sing, dude, sing. He's just staring at me. I said, okay, come on, sing, sing. And then he finally tells me, Guruji's not here yet, so I'm not going to sing. I said, dude, the point is, he wants people singing when he walks in. What's the point once he comes in? He has to start speaking. So until that Raja, the main patron is there, some people, their mouths don't open right there. Doesn't happen. Until that main patron. And that main patron, the music will be according to their liking. Forget the rest of the audience, all right? They're there, they paid their tickets, whatever. We have to cater to that congregation of one right there. That's who matters the most. And you see that in some regimes, an entire culture of a land will change based on the whims and fancies of that one ruler right there. In Spain, for instance, the Spanish that they speak there, there's a slight difference in the accent spoken in Spain compared to the rest of the world. It's called a Castellano way of speaking, where there's no sa sound, it's th. España is how they say. Do you know why that came about? One of their rulers, way back centuries ago, had a lisp. This is true. He couldn't say sa, everything came out of th. Okay? Maybe the front two teeth were too big, or the tongue was too big, or too small also. It can happen different ways, whatever it is. I know this because I was once playing basketball, I got hit in the mouth. For the next 1 week, this whole lip area was swollen. That's how I was speaking. Maybe something like that when he was born. So that he would not feel offended, his entire cabinet and ministers, entire population of the city and later the country, they started speaking like him as well. And that stuck centuries later. Imagine that kind of support, huh? What a good support system he had like that. One ruler, an impediment that they have to not show that and highlight it, a whole culture has changed for centuries to accommodate that. That's how much weight that ruler carries. No matter how fat or skinny they are, that's how much weight that they carry. Now all of this goes on. This is the analogy used to talk about this assemblage that goes on in my daily life. The audience represents the sense objects. A multitude of them, varied in what they do, how they attract me, what kind of hold they have on me, the connection I have with them, all these objects of the world. People, places, things, it encompasses all of that. These musicians are those sense organs. They cater to these sense objects. If they're an audience that seems like they want to do, these guys play faster as well. And you notice, especially with harmonium players, wherever the wah-wah comes from, that's the place that they face their instrument also. If it's coming from this way, wah-wah, they'll pretty much turn and they play for that side only, pretty much. That happens, right? So the sense objects have a hold on these sense organs right here. That dancer is the mind, manaha. Based on what the sense organs want, how fast their tempo goes, this mind responds in kind. When this mind angrily looks at those sense organs, meaning those musicians, to slow down or speed up, they follow suit right there. The mind can control those sense organs. But more often than not, the sense organs control the mind. But that mighty dancer, star of the show, mercurial and changing based on what the situation is, even that dancer, that mind, is subservient to that Raja, the patron. That is that ahankara, that individuality that's there. That when that individuality is there, everything else falls in line with what that ego wants. When that ego vanishes, everything else comes to a standstill right there. Sometimes that patron may not like one instrument, certain instrument. We all have that one instrument we don't like to hear. We would do, before Vajyatarangini became an official thing, when I was in high school and college and everything, informally we'd get our instruments together, they'd ask us to perform somewhere. You'd have a few violins, you'd have a viola, flute, these cute, small, subtle instruments. But you can't say no to any kid when they really want to perform, right? It's open for everyone. This one guy used to come in with this damn bassoon, okay? That bassoon is like shehnai on steroids. It's like a giant instrument. There is no subtle, cute way to play that instrument, man. Even the lower, pow, pow, that's how it sounds. So we'd be Radha Venu Gopala, pow, 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 the whole entire time. So if there's a patron, ego, ahankar, the Raja there that doesn't like that one instrument, he can look at it like this and that guy will say, okay, the king doesn't like it. I want to keep my head connected to my neck, therefore I will not play my instrument anymore. We used to look at him like that too. He never used to stop though. A bassoon. I never liked that instrument for that. It overpowers everything else. So that patron, if he walks out, the whole thing stops. In this entire assembly, there is one entity. The presence of this one entity enables everything else to take place. An unsung hero we don't even think about. the absence of which nothing is possible, that is that singular light shining on that stage. Without that light, the audience does not perceive the dancers. The musicians cannot see their instruments. The patron, no one can stand up and honor that Raja when he comes in because no one can see. Nothing happens without that one light. The ending of this performance also, to say that this theater is empty, meaning the audience is gone, performers are gone, the patron is gone, to even say that they're all gone and not there, I need this light to be able to say that again. Presence or absence or change, anything witnessed solely by that one Sakshi light, that witness right there. If I look at my own assemblage, my sense organs, the sense objects I'm attracted to, the mind that I have, this ego dominating everything, even when all of those are put to rest, even when I step away from all of those, I am that Sakshi, the witness of all of these happenings. That is my source. That is that Sakshi Chaitanya Viveka, the root of everything. Now, in a performance then, when we attend one of these as an audience, in the car ride back home, we'll say, everyone was great, except for the bassoon guy, everyone played well. We'll talk about how great the dancers were, some of them were not in sync. We'll say, did you see the big guy come in? Celebrity sighting, when a celebrity comes in and sits there. When he came in, when he left, all of that. How many of us talk about the light that was there and living the whole thing? That Sakshi is the one that's the most understated. Does my mind go there to understand what I am? So finally, what do we find in the 6th shloka today? Ahamityabhimantayah karta sautasya sadhanam manastasya kriye antar bahirvritti kramuthite. Ahamityabhimantayah. Whenever I think I am that doer. This entire example is nothing but doership. Sense objects around me, they make my sense organs have some kind of stimulation. Because of that, the mind is doing something. Because of that, the patron there is enjoying. Everything is movement-based right here. Mind is my instrument of action. Manas tasya kriye. Because of this mind, kriya is happening. My mind's actions are internal and external. What is that supposed to mean? Internal meaning I think in various forms of the roles that I have. I take on roles of I am this, I am that. External in that even what is not internal here, cognizing what's going on there, I have some memory, recollection, attachment to things outside my mind as well. Now, whether it's grounded in reality or not is not the issue right here. The issue is, when we saw a few shlokas ago, this whole idea of that duality and seeing things as the other, and that is what the cause of my sorrow is, all of that expresses as I am this or I am that. These various roles that I assume. Now the funny part is, for my growth as an individual, I need to assume these various labels. If I have kids, I am a father or I am a mother. If I get married, I am a husband or I am a wife. These labels are there for functional purposes. They should be there. They give me some kind of structure. They give me some kind of milestone, some kind of progress. How invested am I in each of these roles? What do I use that label for? When does that label become an encumbrance on me? When does it shackle and bind me? That is the whole journey to take as this jiva. Understanding what these layers are. I said this in a graduation speech recently. When I was a kid, at the library, I used to get the books, the Berenstain Bears. Your kids saw them as TV shows. The older kids like me read them as books before they were a TV show. Now, everyone in that city has names. I think Grizzly Bear's the mailman. Billy Bear's the car mechanic. It's always the same car he's working on. I don't know. Can you not fix that car? Does everyone drive that same car? I don't know what it is. Always the same stupid car he's working on. The family that's the central family, though, their names were different. Mama Bear, Papa Bear, Brother Bear, Sister Bear. Now, if they call you that at home, that's one thing. Everyone in the city calls them those 4 names only. Papa Bear's colleagues at work call him Papa Bear. Mama Bear's students at school call her Mama Bear. Brother and sister, same thing. The friends called them that also. My thinking at that time when I was 5 years old was, when Brother Bear gets married, will his wife call him Brother Bear? Like, Bhaiya, that's kind of weird, isn't it? So their roles stayed static their entire lives like this. You and I are different. When we become employees, we don't stop being students. When we become parents, we don't stop being children to our own parents. What are all these rules? How do we abide by them the right way, utilizing them the right way without getting bogged down? That is the journey to take. That is where we will start tomorrow. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om